Kalen DeBoer era officially begin in Tuscaloosa with a massive W or potentially a few hiccups along the way? Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered's preview game day show. I'm Cole Thompson. He's Dave Shumate, breaking down everything you need to know going into week one. Follow us on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, at Mock 10 Sports. Make sure that you download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure that also you're checking out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And of course, if you're not following us on the socials, what you doing wrong, Bama Nation? It's at SEC Unfiltered. This episode's brought to you by SeatGeek. Use promo code SECU for $20 off your very first purchase. Who doesn't want to be spending a Saturday in the likes of Bryant-Denny Stadium? Make sure you pick up your tickets today at SeatGeek. $20 off. Promo code SECU. Dave, brand new era of college football headed down to Titletown. Kalen DeBoer, the grand opening, and it's against a very potent offense that we know has always had the ability to score points early in the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Let me ask you, just from a certain overall 360-foot, 3,000 view standpoint, what is the key you're looking for offensively from the Crimson Tide, headlined by Jalen Milroe?
Really operationally, I think you want to see it clean. Like you've gone through a spring, you've gone through a fall camp, just operationally. I mean, we've seen a little bit of the lack of discipline with fall starts, a bunch of penalties here the last 2 to 3 years, really probably since 2020. You kind of felt like that's kind of been the case for the past 3 seasons, 21 through 23. So I could maybe a little bit of that. Talking to people that were that scrimmage, it felt like, hey, maybe we did tone that down a little bit. But when the lights come on, Bryant-Denny, first game, everybody's fired up. You got that nervous feeling, got the butterflies, which can be good because it means you care. But let's see if the discipline, let's see if we can go. Because, again, I don't think you're going to see, I think you would agree with this, Cole. You're not going to see the entire playbook. They're not going to show that. But I think we'll see a clean operation across the board is what I would want to see. I mean, it is wild. I mean, this is the first game we hadn't seen Nick Saban on the sideline since Mike Shula was the head coach. I think they opened up with Utah State in 06.
Yeah.
But I think overall, just from a football standpoint in this game, if you're an Alabama fan, offensively, I think you just want to see a clean operation.
For me, I just want to see who's the next number one. Plain and simple. You lose so much talent when it comes to either the portal or to the NFL draft. No more Jermaine Burton, no more Amari Niblack, no more Isaiah Bond. But you do land a really talented wide receiver who's talked highly about the operations underneath Kalen DeBoer and Jeremy Bernard. This was a guy that just couldn't find his way onto the field last year because they had 3 capable 1,000-yard receivers in Seattle. But when he was making plays, they were human highlight reel grabs. He had 4 touchdowns during his tenure at Washington and Michigan State. He's got that burner mentality. You also got the 5-star phenom, Ryan Williams. How does he fit into this offense? How do you feel about your tight end room? Who's going to step up on third down to be that security blanket, maybe in the flats to where you just pick up the sticks and move the offense? I also want to see how does this depth of the offensive line look? Because the one thing that we don't talk enough about when it comes to Alabama, they may have a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, headlined by Parker Brailsford coming on over, bringing back Caden Proctor, what you have with Pritchett, what you have with the other offensive tackle spots. But what happens if one of them were to go down? The second half of this game, you're going to see what your offensive line really is made of, what it's capable of, how you're able to separate yourself from other teams in the SEC that maybe if they were to lose a player, it ends up hindering their success instead of elevating their success. So I think the offensive line play is extremely important in this game, mostly because of I just want to see what is that next man up mentality. We haven't had to worry about it forever because Nick's been running the show. And so the guys that he brings in, he also has very close ties with the offensive line coach. It's a new system. And you also got to realize that the one missing link from that Washington award-winning national championship caliber offense was losing their offensive line coach to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing guys like Wilkin Formby, Elijah Pritchett, Geno Vandemark, who's going to get a shot, is the backup center behind Brailsford. Like you said, yeah, those guys at the 7th, or I mean, really, hell, you probably go the 6 through 8 guys that inevitably will play because there will be some guys that get nicked up in the middle of the game. So you got to have those guys ready. You're right. See the depth on the offensive line.
Let's go ahead and talk about defensively. It's a new system underneath Kane Womack. He decides to leave South Alabama. He's now in charge. They're going to a base 4-2-5, which even though Alabama ran a lot of nickel defense over the Saban era, they were a base 3-4 unit. And one of the biggest question marks was, how does this relationship transpire now that Saban who basically was the DC, even though he didn't call plays, but it was his model, it was his inertia, it was his inertia. How does this translate? What is, or better yet, who is one player you are watching for in this game against Hilltoppers?
Probably Damani Jackson, the USC transfer that they got in the first transfer portal window. Because even if he's not, he was a 5-star kid from modern day. So like he has talent himself. I want to see that. I think he would have had a good shot at playing even if Saban would return. But he's one of the few guys that has a ton of game experience. And even if he doesn't end up being like as productive as people were thinking throughout the entire season, he's got to be productive at the beginning of the year. So guys like, I think he's probably going to start at the opposite corner, but guys like Xavier Brown, Xavier Mincy, guys like that can get their feet wet. I think you can't, Jalen Mbakwe, another kid from Clay Chalkboy, you could throw through in there. Like the young guys, he's got to step up, man the fort probably the first quarter, half of the season, just so these other guys, you don't want to just throw too many true freshmen in the fire right there, right out of the gate. I think he's got to be at least serviceable, and I think he can be better, and I'd probably lean towards he will be, but I think he's at least got to set that foundation until the younger guys who are going to play a lot and probably be towards the back half of the season, reps-wise, more like sophomores than actually true freshmen. But I think Damani Jackson has to get that playing off the ground from that standpoint from the back end. I think he's key. He's a guy I want to see. I like Devontae Smith, the Husky spot, but I think Damani Jackson at that corner spot is going to be key to how that whole foundation of the back end is, which I think is the big concern for Alabama.
You already talked about this a little bit, but I agree with you. It's the secondary. I want to see the Heisman Trophy winner. Give me Devonta Smith. I got to see what he can do in that Husky spot. It is such a unique position that Kane Womack has from his defense, where you have to be able to tackle, you have to be able to play near the line of scrimmage, you have to be physical and be able to go up against tight ends and running backs out of the backfield, but you can't lose that speed element, because if they do throw you in to play against the slot receiver, he is going to be able to turn on the jets and make you cook. He is going to be able to put you in a blender at times and really make you have to work your way through the play. And so the big element is that, yes, you do have Malachi Moore. Yes, you do have Damani Jackson. Yes, you do have some veterans that maybe weren't at Alabama coming on in, but you have a guy in Devonta Smith that's been a part of the system. He has been in Alabama. He is now going to have an opportunity to really show off why that physical approach is so necessary for this new era of college football that we don't really talk enough about. The nickel position, in my opinion, or the Husky, or however you describe it, where you have a big nickel or a box safety, they become essential because they have to basically be that skeleton key where everything works. They have to do a bit of everything at a high-end level if you want to see success. So I look at a guy like Devonta Smith, who I don't think, again, is going to win the Heisman this year. Sorry, there's already one Devonta Smith in the Heisman Trophy case. We don't need a second. We usually don't see it with defensive players, but we are going to see, I think, another breakout year from a guy who wears a similar name. And maybe it's a big reason why we are talking about the Crimson Tide making it to Atlanta. First year underneath Kalen DeBoer. But Dave, real fast, before we go and move on to predictions, what is the one thing you just want to walk out of this game knowing about Alabama?
Just knowing about them from a
overall
standpoint. It goes back to initially to my first answer. Not trying to be boring from that perspective, but I just want to see a clean. I just want to see a clean operation, a clean look, and maybe that's just from the football background. But it's really not a score. Yeah, let's don't have a close game going into the fourth quarter or something like that. And that's no offense to Western Kentucky. I think it's just a bad matchup for them. I think the offense has gone down about 7 points more. I just think Alabama's going to kind of do what they will do, what they want to do in this game. If I wanted to see something, let's see Jalen Milroe kind of a little bit take that next step is like, hey, he's comfortable. This is his job this year. He's not looking over his shoulder. He's been there through a spring. Nick Sheridan's one of his, I think they're in and out of the office from what I hear all the time together. First, I mean, he mentioned it last year. Jalen Milroe was always the first one in the office. It sounds like he's closer to the head coach this year. That's nothing against Nick Saban, but it sounds like Jalen Milroe has grown into his own. I want to kind of see that from a leadership standpoint, comfortability standpoint when he takes the field, really, if we're talking just big picture. I'd like to see him just come out and look clean and crisp in this first game.
Every single time that we talk about championship mentality teams, it's the ability to keep the offense on the field and meticulously run down that clock. If Alabama is going to be right alongside Georgia's, the Texases, the Ole Misses of the world, you can even throw in Ohio State and Oregon from a Big Ten perspective, maybe Miami. You got to be able to milk that clock. I want to see what this running back room looks like, headlined by Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. I feel like that these are two players that are really going to now benefit in the overall grand scheme of what the SEC running back room is because of the unfortunate timing injuries to CJ Baxter and Ruben Owens. It's going to open up the opportunities for them to become focal points of the SEC ground game. You have a mobile quarterback in Jalen Milroe. We know what he can do when he gets into space, but if you can continuously work that third down percentages, conversion after conversion, burn that clock, put pressure on Western Kentucky. And again, it's Western Kentucky. We already know what this score is supposed to be. We already know what the numbers are supposed to project. What I'm asking is, can you do this at an elite level to where when you have the opportunity to play in a few weeks against Wisconsin, when you have the opportunity to play against Tennessee, when you play against Georgia, you can have a same identity. Last 3 times that these teams have played against each other, the average win total has been by 31.3 points. Alabama is 3-0 all time against the Hilltoppers, last playing against them in 2016. Dave, let me just go final thoughts, score prediction.
Obviously, I'm going to go Alabama here. Again, I'm actually really excited for this opener. Fun time to really – it's wild, just a new era, someone else coming out of the tunnel other than Nick Saban. It's not saying it's not a slight toward coach, but it's just – I think, man, it's wild as it gets closer here as we're less than 3 weeks as we record this away from this first game. Score prediction, you said the 31-point difference. I'm going to go 44-17.
So you're going a little bit higher than me. Okay. I mean, that's fair. Listen, I think there's going to be some gripes at the very beginning of the game. I would not expect anything less than maybe 1 touchdown from the first team defense being allowed. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be about at least double-digit points for Western Kentucky. But I just want to see what this rushing attack can do. I want to see Ryan Williams be able to live up to the 5-star plus hype. I want to see what this offensive line can be. And ultimately, I just want to see a new era of Crimson Tide football. There's so much positivity surrounding the fan base, so much positivity surrounding the future of this organization. And it feels like that fans went to sleep one night and then woke up and realized, oh, we're in good hands because if it's like Allstate, even though, maybe we got to get that deal for Kalen DeBoer because Nick Saban had Aflac, but he's still bringing in 5-star recruits like no one's business. It's Alabama. It's the script day. It's the Standard in Tuscaloosa. Giving them 44-14 a final score. That is for us here on SEC Unfiltered Game Prediction. Make sure that you're checking out all of our game predictions leading up to week 1 between Dave Shumate, myself, Chris Phillips, rotating in a cast of characters, giving you highlights and update information leading into kickoff. Kickoff, of course, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Bryant-Denny Stadium, between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on social media at Mock10 Sports, at Mr. Cole Thompson, at SEC Unfiltered. And to keep up with the #1 source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. He's Dave Shumate. Until next time, folks. Later.